Good morning to your friends. Hope you are doing well, and welcome on in to a Tuesday, December 2nd. It is Election Day for the 7th Congressional District. Not a moment too soon, and we've got some polls opening here in about another hour, depending on where you are. Of course, we've been talking about this ad nauseum now for what seems like forever. We do have Cheatham County, Davidson County opening at 7 a.m., Dixon County, also Montgomery County, Robertson County, and Williamson County, all opening at 7 a.m. 8 a.m.ers, you've got Wayne County, Stewart County, also it looks like Hickman County, Decatur County, and Benton County. Those are going to open at 8 a.m. Houston County, Humphreys County, those counties are opening up at 9 a.m., along with Perry County, and all of these counties will close at 7 p.m. tonight. So it's the day that we've all been waiting for. And one of the things that I want to talk about really is a number of different things, obviously. There's so many ways to cover this story. Number one, the lack of real, actual issues-oriented talk from Afton Bain. That's number one. Number two, she is running from who she is. She refuses to talk about whether or not she would defund the police, which obviously she would. I've got that part of the story coming up. But what the Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to get off to which they already have, by the way, with the elections that were held a couple of weeks ago in Virginia and New York with Mamdani and the mayoral race in New York and all that happened a few weeks ago. But by and large, I mean, with a few exceptions, but by and large, those were expected. Big shocker, right? The blue cities and the blue states voted blue. Not a big deal. Here, this is completely different. This is, as you know, the 7th Congressional District. Trump and Mark Green both won by double digits, up, 22, 23 points. So if the Democrats are able to either flip this or even make it close, then they will look at this as a major victory, and this would not be a running start heading towards the midterm elections. This would be a sprint heading into the midterm elections. And here's the problem. The problem is that if it is close, then, again, it does give them the ability to have this narrative that they've got the Republicans on the run. Now, let's just play what happens if. What happens if the Democrats end up getting ultimately the House of Representatives in the midterm elections? It is already really close. And then what happens if ultimately that leads to the Democrats getting the White House in 2028? And then, Lord help us, what happens if they keep it in the midterm elections of like 2030? Do you know what is going to happen? Do you know what the Democrats want to do? You know, we always talk about, yesterday we talked a lot about the lesser of two evils and about how there's some people that say that Matt Van Epps is the lesser of two evils, and they refuse to vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, I want you to think about Donald Trump. I want you to think about Tom Homan. I want you to think about Pete Hegseth. I want you to talk about or think about Marco Rubio and how the Democrats will more than likely go after them legally, and could try to end up throwing some of those folks in jail, just like they did Donald Trump. Tom Homan, border czar Tom Homan, was on with Fox News and Jesse Waters.
Democrats are chomping at the bit. They want to go after Hegseth for war crimes. Now they're potentially targeting rank-and-file soldiers for just obeying orders. Are you worried, Tom, that they're going to target you with prosecution after this is all over?
Oh, they already said they're going to, so come get some. Bottom line is, I'm not going to let them forget what they did the last 4 years. 500,000 children were separated from their families and smuggled across this border. 250,000 Americans died from drug overdoses that came across that border. And what's President Trump done?
Yep.
He gave us the most secure border in the history of this nation, which means sex trafficking plummeted. No unsuspected terrorists coming across the borders plummeted. Criminal cartels are going broke. He record deportation. Every promise he'd made to the American people, he's getting. And let's not forget, we're going to find every one of these people that weren't vetted, and we're going to make sure They are properly vetted, and if not, they're going home. President Trump's going to make this country safe again. He made that promise. We're going to make sure that he keeps that promise.
So that is Tom Homan, and obviously, clearly, he's got a lot of passion. And, you know, the Democrats will sit here and talk about how horrific the Trump administration has been. But just to hear Tom Homan, you know, rattle off all of the victories when it comes to illegal immigration, securing the border, finding those kids that were lost. I mean, we found, I mean, I've lost track now, but we have found a ton of missing kids in Memphis. So whether we're talking about illegal immigration at the southern border, securing the southern border, or you want to talk about ICE in cities like Memphis and other cities all across America, yes, it is helping the crime rate. It is plummeting. So I know that there's a lot of folks who are down about the way that the Trump administration is handling some things. But he's got a lot of victories. He really does have a lot of victories. And so they're talking to Scott Jennings, was at a Manhattan Institute thing here. I think this was yesterday. And he was asked, what keeps you up at night? And I thought that this was a really good conversation and really dovetails or ties into what I was saying about what is at stake if it is even close in the 7th Congressional District and how that could launch the Democrats into a sprint into the midterm elections.
Well, what keeps me up at night? Losing elections. I mean, honestly, like the biggest danger to momentum is losing the next election. If they win, they will impeach the president again. If they win big and somehow get control of the Senate, I think Trump is right about this. They will eliminate the filibuster. If they were to win in 26 and 28, they will pack the courts. They will make D.C. and Puerto Rico states.
Yep.
They will do a lot of terrible things in a very, very short period of time. So what keeps me up at night is our political future. And I think we do have a lot of good things going right now, but it can all come to a screeching halt and go the exact opposite direction in the blink of an eye. So I worry about that. I hope President Trump spends 2026 doing what he does best, which is selling. We've done a lot of great things. He's put a lot of balls in the air, and a lot of them have gone through the hoop. But now it's time to sell. And it's time to sell domestically.
Yep. He's absolutely right. Donald Trump has done a lot of good. And I realize that there are some things that we disagree with. I mean, we could disagree over the handling of the Epstein files. We can disagree over the 600,000 Chinese students. We can disagree over a lot of things. But let's not lose focus on the fact that Republicans and Donald Trump have actually done some good. I mean, remember what happened during Joe Biden? All those illegal aliens streaming across a wide open southern border and the Democrats lying to us about it. You really want to go back to that? I don't. Joe Biden deemed all those illegal aliens, or many of them, legally present to give them as much financial incentive to come into our country as possible. You want that again? They're going to try and nationalize no voter ID. They'll truly rig elections. They'll truly rig the system to ensure they have the power forever that they crave. Making Puerto Rico and D.C. states, that would give them representation in the House and the Senate. They would be voting Democrat clearly, and that would give the Democrats an edge in the Senate and the House of Representatives. That is part of what they would do. This is my concern, is that with people who will say they consider Van Epps the lesser of two evils, you can't look at this as just one race. This race in the 7th could be the most important political event of the year as we head into the midterm elections next year, because this is a very red district. You want to supercharge or turbocharge the greater evil, which is the Democrats in Afton Bain, allow the Democrats to flip this seat or even allow it to be close. This isn't a bunch of blue states voting in blue politicians or blue policies. No, this would be a red district having their congressional seat flipped, which is really humiliating, obviously. Especially when you have a situation with Donald Trump where he has, in my opinion, done a lot of good. I do believe the president does have a lot of things to brag about. There's still work to be done, of course, but Scott Jennings talks about the things that have gone right for the Trump administration.
One of the greatest foreign policy presidents we've had in recent memory. That doesn't typically move the needle domestically. And so I think it's time to sell on the domestic front. I do think the big, beautiful bill was great. I think the welfare reform was great. Making tax cuts permanent was great. Middle-class tax cuts for working-class people was great. Solving the immigration crisis was great. But what we talk mostly about with him right now is foreign policy. And look, I'm a motivated guy when it comes to foreign policy, but most voters are motivated by domestic issues. So I want them to turn him back into the middle of this country and go out and remind people why we kicked their asses to the curb last year and put him back in. And I know that he can do it.
I do believe that he can do it as well. And as far as things to brag about, I mean, GDP is on the rise, right? So surprisingly solid. People are spending, businesses are expanding, businesses are doing research and development thanks to deregulation, and yes, Donald Trump's tax cuts. GDP on the rise, that is good for everyone. I keep talking about real wages going up. That is wages versus inflation. And how are wages doing compared to inflation? So as inflation has been cooling, wages have been rising. Unemployment rate is around 4%. That is considered good. Groceries, admittedly, are still too high. But the good news is that the rate of increase is slowing. So that's good news. Check this out. This is from CBS News. Just because I want to tell you that there's some folks out there that will tell you that things are all bad with the economy, and it's really not. CBS News. This is from, I think, last night. Grocery prices have seen significant improvement over the last 12 months, with the Consumer Affairs Data Assembly Shopping Cart Index down 4% from this time last year. Now, the Data Assembly Shopping Cart, it's basically a bunch of goods that, they put in a theoretical shopping cart, and they have the same goods, and they look at it, quarterly. So from this time last year, prices are down 4%. That's good. You grok it, the same thing, sort of. They say that inflation is cooling, groceries are still too high, but things are stabilizing and will continue now to go down in 2026. So, yeah, there is work to be done. Admittedly so, there is work to be done, but the president has been working hard on the economy. I know that foreign policy has been what has been driving the narrative. We've got, I think it's Steve Witkoff is in a meeting with the Russians, I guess, today. I got to tell you that I would rather talk about what is going on here in America. I don't know if they're going to be able to find a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I would rather focus on gas prices, which, guess what? This was on CNN yesterday. Gas prices have dropped to their lowest level since 2021.
It's nice to finally be here with some good news on the cost of living front. So for the first time in 4.5 years, gas prices are averaging $3 a gallon nationally, according to AAA, down by 7 cents in just the past week. Gas prices were low a year ago as well, but they're even cheaper now. This is encouraging to see because late last month, there was a period where gas prices were actually higher this year than last year, but that has reversed again. And now we've just fractions of a penny away from breaking below $3 a gallon. Now, as you mentioned, we've got 20 states across the country where the average is actually less than $2.75 a gallon.
Now, you folks watching on Super Talk TV, you will see that Tennessee is one of those states.
Including North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Colorado as well. Certainly nice to see this.
Yep. And so bottom line is cost of gas right now in Tennessee, $2.56 a gallon. And that is very good. Now, remember that as the cost of gasoline goes down, so will the cost of groceries. And I do believe that we have to be patient with the cost of groceries. It does take time to fix the economy. And once you put these things in play, whether it is tariffs, whether it is trade deals, whatever deregulation the Trump administration wants to do or has done, it does take time for those things to bake into the economy. But right now, I think the president does have a running start.
Why is this happening? Well, it all comes down, of course, to oil prices, right? Oil prices are about $59 a barrel this morning. If you look back in history, on December 1, 3 years ago, we're looking at $81 a barrel for oil, $67 even last year. So significantly cheaper. And that's because right now, supply of oil continues to outpace demand.
So there you go. I mean, listen, and we all know that Donald Trump has worked feverishly to increase oil production. And I think that ultimately that is going to help oil prices and gas prices. And as gas prices continue to go down, then we will see a lot of other things fall as well. I do believe that there are good times ahead. I'm not being Pollyannish on this. I think that there is work to be done, but I think that there has been a lot of work that has already been done to tackle affordability, which is everything that the Democrats and Afton Bain in the 7th have been running on. But it doesn't seem to me like the Democrats really, they don't have any scoreboard as of late when it comes to affordability. Do they? Can we ask that question? Do Democrats have anything on the scoreboard when it comes to affordability over the past, 3-4 years? No. We all know what kind of a disaster Joe Biden's presidency was. And if you want to start talking about the affordability of health care, well, I hate to keep going all the way back to 2010 and Obamacare, but that really, really screwed health care. And right now, if you're trying to buy health care on the exchanges, on Obamacare, through Obamacare, if you are dirt poor and have no money, it's great. But if you're somebody who is lower to middle class, to upper middle class, and you've got to actually buy your health insurance, it is really, really expensive. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have not seen the Democrats come up with anything outside of wanting single payer that would actually lower the cost of health insurance for the average American. I showed, Joan, I don't know about you, but I showed 34 degrees in Nashville.
Okay.
And wet roadways, yes, indeed. So you do want to watch the overpasses. But as you just heard Stefano DiPietro say, colder today, mostly sunny, and a high of 35. I want to welcome on into the program Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, always great to have you on. And immigration, we've got these Afghans that came in under Joe Biden. We're going to talk about that as well. A lot to talk about from an immigration standpoint. So one of the things that Donald Trump wants to do is he wants to pause permanently all migration from third world countries. And so we're talking about, countries like Afghanistan, countries like Somalia and Yemen and some of these other places. And I don't know about you, but that does seem to make sense. And to hear Donald Trump say it, this is literally a quote, we don't want them here, we don't need them here. What say you?
I don't even know why this is controversial, because it just seems to make total common sense, both on the sort of quality of life aspect, but also on the public safety aspect. Because as you know, and all of us know, with what happened with this Afghan refugee or however you want to characterize them, there's no way to really confirm the people from these countries are safe. They have no record keeping. There's no way to vet them in any meaningful way. So you have the public safety aspect that it's a lose-lose for the American people. But then how does that improve the quality of life for Americans? And that should be the big issue on immigration is, do the people we bring in, do they make our lives better? And are they safe? And if you can't answer both questions in the affirmative with a high degree of confidence, I don't even know why that's a question mark. But, the Democrats, Mark Kelly, did the calling people racist thing when he was talking about it over the weekend. And it's just very interesting because it's like they're not doing it, meaning the Democrats aren't altruistic in their view. They just see these people as their voters, which is all you need to know about the Democratic Party. As long as they vote for the Democrats in a high percentage, meaning probably 60 to 70%, they're happy as clams to have all of them come in regardless of the effects of the American people. And we saw that with the Biden administration. They never even seemed to care when people like Lake and Riley were murdered. I mean, they wouldn't even give it, just basic levels of courtesy and common decency. So back to your question, it totally makes sense. I can't even imagine that the average American would think it's even slightly controversial, and Donald Trump, it's the polar opposite of Biden. It's public safety, national interest ahead of political interest, which was all Biden was about.
So we had the horrific tragedy of, because it could have been clearly prevented, member of the National Guard shot to death, Washington, D.C. The other one, the second member of the National Guard, showing signs of improvement. That's great. The former, I think he was a translator. Bottom line is he worked with our military in Afghanistan. I know that you know the story, Jonathan. I want to kind of tell the story for people that don't know the complete story. The guy that shot the member of the National Guard, he worked with us in Afghanistan, and he worked with us for a long time. And so then when it came time to, that failed pullout of Afghanistan, which of course led to so many mistakes and so many issues over the long term when it came to Joe Biden's presidency, it led to the Russia-Ukraine war. China sees us as weak, whole thing. But one of the things that it led to was all of these people who did help us during the war in Afghanistan, they came over to our country because the thinking was that the Taliban would kill them because they were working with us. And so now the question is, was this guy vetted? That's number one. And number two, the Trump administration also allowed him to stay in our country. It seems to me, though, that the president and his administration, they're put in this situation where they're set up to fail because we've got all of these people here and we don't know what they're capable of. We don't know what they went through during the war. So there's a number of things that are going on. I'm sorry, long-winded question, but there's a number of things going on. Number one is this guy, for example, the guy that took out the member of the National Guard in D.C., he had PTSD. He was isolating himself. He couldn't find a job. There are a lot of things that were going on in his life. And so we've brought all of these people over here, and we don't know what they're going through. We don't know what they're capable of. And this guy leaves his wife, his 5 children, drives from the state of Washington all the way to Washington, D.C. to yell Allah Akbar and shoot 2 members of the National Guard. And so, number one, I guess, is they still keep saying, well, we don't know what the motive was. Well, he screamed Allah Akbar. Okay, so that should be a clue. That's number one. But number two, how many more of these guys are out there?
Yeah, that's a great question about whenever the media doesn't know what the motive is, we always know what the motive is. It's like we're just afraid to say what the motive is. But yeah, there are many, many more of these guys out there. And one thing that's so troublesome about this whole thing is you hear this stuff that some the people are vetted or not vetted or whatever. But the bottom line is it really doesn't matter. Like this guy worked for the CIA or whatever. It's like, the reason he was doing it, and no one will ever talk about this, they were paying these people. So these people that were working for us over there were getting paid substantially more than they would be otherwise making. So this idea that they were somehow loyal to Americans, loyal to the American cause is completely laughable. And we attribute all of these amazing qualities to and we do it all the time with every immigrant, legal and illegal. We only attribute the greatest motives and qualities. But this idea that, any of these people, one, could have been vetted is nonsense because there's no way to, you do the records check, you call the guy at the Taliban county office to see if he's okay. It's such utter nonsense. And the other thing that's just so bothersome about it, and I think your point of it's like you dump the problem here and then the Trump administration is in the lose-lose. It's just like the overall immigration policy, the Biden policy, the cynicism of it was you dump in 10 to 20 million people and then you act like the Trump administration is mean by trying to send them back. It's insane. But, one of the things I saw that we brought in, I think it was 190,000 people total in these Operation Afghans Are Wonderful or whatever they call them. So this idea that we had so much help over there is also kind of hard to believe because it's like, then why did the Taliban overrun the country in like 2 weeks? It's like we had really this much help. It's hard to believe that. And it's also like hard to believe like how many translators did each service member have because everyone seems to have been a translator for the Americans. So the whole thing is so much nonsense. And we are at such a public safety risk, and we probably have not even scratched the surface of this yet. And, you have this one person that's, maybe the canary in the coal mine of what happened to these National Guard members, but it's going to happen again. And the Democrats are going to fight tooth and nail every effort we make to remove these people. Even if we remove them to a third party country that's not the Taliban, they will fight us on that, which is truly astonishing. And then you put on top of that, I don't know if you've seen the numbers, but the percentage of people from Afghanistan that are on like the SNAP program and some of these programs, it's astonishingly high. It's probably around like 50%. So it's bleeding money. It's putting us at risk. God, love them for the people that really did help us with great motives. But I don't think that means we have to put the American people at risk in perpetuity because of it.
When I said that Trump is in a lose-lose, here's what I mean by that. So Biden's administration brings in, of course, the failed pullout of Afghanistan led to all that chaos, not to mention the deaths of 13 members of our military. But we had all of that chaos of the pullout of Afghanistan, which means that we loaded thousands of these folks into airplanes and brought them into America. So Trump is, damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, in the sense that if he says, okay, you know what? No asylum for you, and you've got to go back to Afghanistan, he is going to get absolutely skewered. So then you let them stay, and this is what happens. And so I think that the Biden administration did set up the Trump administration to fail, and they did also set up the American people to fail, given what we're now seeing, not only, as you mentioned, the number of these folks either, from Somalia or Yemen or Afghanistan who are on the government dole and living off of the taxpayers clearly getting a little frustrated. And so I think for the Trump administration, it does make all the sense in the world to try to pause permanently all migration from these third world countries. One of the other things that's we're all talking about here, Jonathan, in the 7th Congressional District, we've got that big race going on today, is that I believe, and Scott Jennings and many others believe, that the Democrats, if they ultimately get back into power, they're going to start going after people like Pete Hegseth and of course, Donald Trump and maybe Tom Homan as well. Try to bring him up on charges. And, Pete Hegseth, maybe war crimes and all that kind of stuff. How worried are you that if the Democrats get back into power, they're going to start doing that kind of thing, like we saw during the Biden administration when they went after Donald Trump?
We know that's exactly what they're going to do because we know they don't have any other sort of policy or affirmative policy that they're pushing. And all they talk about is Donald Trump, and all they engage in are all these subversive tactics, with immigration or with any of these things, trying to undermine the military. So, yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to basically tie up the country for the two years until the next election if they get elected, and they're gonna try to all they're gonna do is investigate, try to make the administration look bad, try to think of reasons to impeach President Trump again or bring people up on charges. So it's really going to be bad. And I think when people are voting, particularly you have like Tennessee, it's such a close margin right now in the House that it's like we need to keep the House so that we can get hopefully some good legislation passed so the American people can see the good things the Republicans are doing. But the downside is really, really bad. And I think it's always hard to say bad things will happen if somebody gets elected, as opposed to it's a lot easier to say, hey, look at the things we've done, and that's how things are usually decided in elections. So the Republicans really need to have a great year, and it does scare me when I see that election in Tennessee. I think the Republican, from what I understand, is going to pull it out, but the fact that it's even close with that level of candidate on the Democratic side versus a very strong candidate on the Republican side is kind of concerning, because it's somewhat of a barometer of where the American people are. When places that shouldn't be close become close, it means the close places might be flipping. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the main strategy of the Democratic Party, will be go all in Donald Trump administration to set themselves up for 2028.
So the Trump administration double tap, taking out the narco terrorists. The left is losing their ever-loving mind over this. and I said this yesterday, I don't understand if there's something wrong with me, somebody please tell me. But wasn't the whole point to take out the narco terrorists? I just, if they violated some international law, okay. But to me, the left screaming about the deaths of these narco terrorists trying to bring drugs into our country, they're screaming about that. Yet, as you said earlier, had nothing to say about the death of someone like Laken Riley. It's just disturbing on a number of different levels.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because what I don't understand, and I want somebody on the Democrat side to explain how they draw the distinction between what Obama was doing with the drone strikes. Because remember, they killed American citizens abroad with drone strikes in the Obama administration. I think there were several hundred civilians that were killed during it. They were not terrorists. So what's the distinction if we've labeled both groups as terrorist organizations, as Trump has done with these cartels? I want somebody to explain that distinction. And then you go to the Biden administration, did the same thing, and sort of going back to Afghanistan, after Abbey-gate, they decided to kill an Afghan family. I mean, I don't think it was intentional, but remember, as retaliation, they killed the wrong people.
They thought they were getting the guys that took out our members of the military. And they killed like a family of 9.
Right. So yeah, like I want somebody in all seriousness, and it's such a good point that you made, is like I want a Democrat to just explain that distinction to me, because maybe there is one, right, between that and the narco boats. Because if you think of what has the more direct impact on American people and American people's lives, is it somebody over in Yemen, or are people bringing drugs that are going to kill American kids to our country, which is actually a greater risk to our country? And also strategically, what's also a greater benefit is Donald Trump is basically reclaiming the Western Hemisphere, and the message is really strong to Mexico when he's doing this, and we'll get a lot more help out of them, and really strong to China. So there's a strategic benefit to it, which arguably I don't think was with some of the stuff in Yemen. And then there is the direct benefit to public safety. But yeah, like going back to your point, it's like, yeah, what if it's wrong, it's always been wrong. You know, it's been wrong since 2001. And if it hasn't been, then they are just making politics out of something they shouldn't be making politics out of.
All right, real quick, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. I know that you've been keeping up with this story. Massive amounts of fraud in Minnesota. You've got immigration fraud. You've also got all of this COVID funding to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars going to these Somalians, and some of that money is going off to al-Shabaab, basically an offshoot of al-Qaeda. I'm not really shocked by all of this, but, what's your take on that?
Yeah, Tim Walz, I mean, every time you look at, watch him on TV or something, he just is one of the least impressive people sort of, just talking about the issues. But it makes you think that they were covering this up for political reasons, because they didn't want to upset the Somali community. And another situation where the Democrats put illegal immigrants or immigrants ahead of the American people. But it just shows utter incompetence, utter unwillingness to deal with something because it's politically incorrect. And now, now they're going to, probably attack Republicans for pointing it out, which they always do. But yeah, Tim Walz is just, he's one of these people that seems like no matter what job he would ever have, he'd give the appearance of always being in over his head. But he really does seem to be that when you sort of view him talking about it.
Well, and I would agree with you, Jonathan Fahey. I also believe that Tim Walz, not only is he incompetent, but he's also corrupt as hell. And the local officials in Minnesota, we talked about this yesterday, spoke about how they tried to act as whistleblowers, but they were bullied and shut down by Tim Walz.